Good evening to those bored enough to watch. In a previous video, I discussed the mainline entries in the Five Nights at Freddy's series, ranging from the ones I'll always find replay value in and the ones that may falter in certain aspects in my opinion. In this video, I want to discuss the Five Nights at Candy's games, how they use inspiration to adapt and create an identity of their own, and why these games have a lot of value in revisiting. So, with that said, let's discuss Five Nights at Candy's. Five Nights at Candy's mostly takes inspiration from the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, and as a result has a lot of similarities to it, although there are a few noticeable differences. Namely, this game omits the door lights that the first Five Nights at Freddy's game had, which means that as opposed to turning it on every time you wanted to check for an unwelcome visitor, you can instead spot them immediately via the pair of eyes staring at you from the door. While in Five Nights at Freddy's, you checked if Bonnie or Chica were still at their respective doors by looking out for the former's silhouette, or the latter menacingly staring at you from the window. In Five Nights at Candy's, you instead need to open the camera and check the doors nearest to your office and check if the animatronics were still standing there. This means that, by having more things to look out for in the cameras, the more rooms you need to check, hence encouraging you to use the cameras much more. Much like its source material, this game ensures that there is never a moment where you're truly safe, and I like how this game adapts and achieves this effect in its own way. For example, while most animatronics could be identified via their eyes appearing at your door, there are animatronics that are exempt from this, either because they need to be identified some other way or because they have an entirely different functionality. For example, Old Candy is an animatronic who is only visible via the cameras and won't be seen at your doors in the office. This means that you need to consistently check for him or else you'll get jump scared. It's worth noting that the rat shares this functionality, and while he does appear in the fifth night, he's unlikely to reach your office due to him becoming active from 4 AM onwards. However, he is extremely active in the sixth night. The game also has Blank, which is this game's equivalent to Foxy, whom you'll need to watch on his respective camera, particularly for the attack phase he's on. This is because when he's seen standing directly in front of the camera, it's indicative that you're the most susceptible to an attack from him, in which as opposed to entering from either of the doors, he'll try to break through the office window in the center of the room. The only way to ward him off is to close the window before he attacks. Seeing him on the camera is the only rough indication you'll get to expect a visit from him. When exactly he'll attack is a different matter entirely to my knowledge. For me, this meant closing the office window whenever I was checking the camera and opening it whenever I wasn't. This is because the matter of power consumption should also factor into whatever strategy you use when playing this game, in which the power is a mechanic it expands upon as well. When a door is closed, it'll gradually consume more power depending on how long it's closed for, which is indicated by the bar becoming more full if you keep a door closed for long periods of time. To me, while this game does take inspiration from its source material, it expands and molds that into an identity it can call its own, which allows it to not only replicate that addictive nature from the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, but also retain a sense of familiarity from it while still maintaining its own presence. In retrospect, that allows this game to hold up well in my opinion, and combined with its addictive, fun and engaging gameplay, I find worth in replaying this game whenever returning to the Five Nights at Candy's series as a whole. Although I don't consider myself a Five Nights at Candy's purist by any means, I'll always play both the original version of this game as well as the remaster whenever I revisit this series. Playing both is how I got into it in the first place, and over time I suppose I've yet to find any reason to play one version over the other. The remaster has a lot of things to see as post-game content, however I find it worth noting that it does remove some other technical aspects from the original version. For example, whenever Old Candy or the rat were at your door in the original version of the game, a slight humming noise could be heard at whatever door they were at which indicated as such. This was removed in the remaster. It was quite a nice atmospheric detail in my opinion, and while unfortunate to see it removed, it's easy to see why. If you listened out for it, then you wouldn't need to check the cameras for them and only needed to watch Blank as a result. Omitting this detail from the remaster could rectify this oversight and restore their intended purpose in the game's design. Overall, I find worth in revisiting both versions of this game, although whether you choose to do this or just remain with a single version of the game is up to you. Either way, both versions have the aforementioned incredibly fun and engaging gameplay. I enjoy my time with Five Nights at Candy's too whenever I revisit it, and retrospectively I think it improves upon the first game in a multitude of ways but regresses in others. Not to say that the original version of the game looked bad by any means, but compared to it the visuals have improved here a lot, as can be seen by the improved models and lighting that's shown in various parts of the game. However, I think that it struggles to find a balance in terms of difficulty, with it either being too easy or too difficult, and in the main Five Nights it's rarely ever the latter. In my opinion, I think it's because the game's design fails to account for a lot of things. For example, in the first game, there was never a moment where you were truly safe. Idling in the office for too long would make you susceptible to an attack from Old Candy, the rat or Blank, and as the doors were your last line of defense against the animatronics, spending too long on the cameras left you open to them. This encouraged you to spend an equal, consistent amount of time on the cameras and the office, as leaning into one more than the other was likely to cause a jump scare. The second second game doesn't really emphasize that point. It takes a lot of inspiration from the third Five Nights at Freddy's game, and for better or for worse, changes things enough to distinguish itself as its own experience. On one hand, I think that atmospherically, the way it adapts the audio mechanics is quite unique. It takes you out of the usual office setting and places you in the middle of a hallway where there's nothing standing between you and the animatronics. If whom when visible in the halls, you needed to open the camera and use the audio to lure them away. With that said, it's worth noting that Chester will sometimes try to use the vents to get to you, and when you hear him banging on the vents, you needed to find the camera he's on and scare him away with the audio instead. Aside from that and an animatronic being in the hallway, I don't think that there was ever a reason to consistently check the cameras. In my experience with replaying the game, I could just sit in the hallway spamming the flashlight, and only if I heard Chester or saw an animatronic would I then bother to open the cameras, and I think that this issue stems from there not being a looming threat to punish you for not consistently checking the cameras like the second Five Nights at Freddy's game did with the music box. In the first game, Blank was one of many that filled that role more than adequately, but this game doesn't have anything of that nature. Blank just acts the same way any other animatronic aside from Chester or the Penguin would. The extra nights such as the 720 mode are representative of the idea that this can be a difficult game, but it just needs to be balanced in a way that allows it to, which is unfortunately absent from the main Five Nights in my opinion. Overall, the visuals and the atmosphere are improved from the first game, but I think that the gameplay regresses and struggles to expand upon what the first game established. With that in mind, I still think that this is a good game and that there is some worth in revisiting it, and I find that its attempts to craft its own identity from the inspiration derived from its source material quite charming, and I enjoy experiencing that. Five Nights at Candy's 3 is the longest out of the three games and takes the most inspiration from the fourth Five Nights at Freddy's game. However, not only do I think that its story is one of many components used to distinguish itself, but the setting of being within a child's bedroom is used in a very different way. For example, the fourth Five Nights at Freddy's game saw you needing to cycle through going to many different areas of the bedroom to ward off animatronics. In this game, while following a similar premise, has you situated in a single spot throughout, only equipped with a flashlight as you navigate to the many different entry points that the monster rat will use to enter. The game also encourages you to be vigilant, as much like Nightmare Fredbear, the monster rat may try to trick you by knocking in parts of the room that he isn't actually in, meaning you need to be extra vigilant as just before he does so, he'll knock in the place he's really in and will try to distract you immediately afterwards by leading you to the wrong area. Even though this game only has two animatronics to keep an eye on during the main Five Nights, I still think that the game is a massive improvement over the second in terms of gameplay, as you're made to feel completely defenseless against them. There's no doors you can close or anything of that nature, and the only way to ward them off is to draw them into your flashlight. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 mostly made you conceal any threats behind the darkness. This game forces you to confront them face to face, and I adore that contrast. I also feel as though the removal of the cameras helps this game a lot, as the second game never really gave you much reason to use them despite its attempts to. By focusing entirely on the monster rat and cat and having them at the forefront of everything you watch for in the room is a massive improvement that this game makes. It brings back that feeling of never truly being safe, as you need to consistently keep watch over the room to ensure you don't get jump scared. The tape recorder is also a very interesting feature as well, as it brings the advantage of making nights proceed faster when it's playing, although it's worth noting that the tape recorder is a luxury that you can't have on at all times. One of the reasons for this is that the recorder will eventually stop, requiring you to take the time to turn your back, rewind and replay it. The second reason is that if it's playing when the monster rat enters the room, he'll break it when he goes under the bed, making it much more difficult to hear him when you draw him out. Furthermore, when he does this, you'll need to turn your back, pause the tape and rewind it once more. In general, the tape recorder brings a more strategic element to the gameplay, as you need to decide upon a good time to turn your back to the monsters and rewind, pause or play the tape, as doing so at the wrong time can easily cause your demise. Overall, I think that there is a lot of worth in revisiting this game. Not only does it have the most post-game content in the series, but the gameplay itself is fun, strategic and engaging that serves as a great improvement to the second game, really striving to mold the inspiration taken from its source material into something it can call its own. Common sentiment I have with the Five Nights at Candy's games is that it always takes its source material and expands upon it, trying to change and adapt it into something it can use to distinguish itself. Whether it be in big or small ways, it's always something I can appreciate with this series. Retrospectively looking back on it, each entry always tried something new, becoming more ambitious in that venture, and even if sometimes the game fell flat on its face because of it, the effort is something I'll always appreciate whenever I revisit this series. What gives a game replay value is a subjective matter, and in my opinion, the Five Nights at Candy's series is endlessly replayable. So there's the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I've had the idea to make this video for quite some time now, but always held off for one reason or another. I figured now would be a good time to make this video. If you want to view the list of games I want to make videos about in the future, then you can always do so through the link in the description. Additionally, if you want to follow me, then my socials will be linked in the description, as well as any afterthoughts or messages I may want to add. With that, I haven't really got much else I want to say, so I'll see you all in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.